The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber gleamed under 3 different suns on Nexus Prime. Representatives from 12 advanced species sat in their designated sections, each area designed for their unique biology. The water-breathing Aquarians floated in their transparent spheres filled with blue liquid. The towering Vorthons stood on elevated platforms, their gray skin reflecting the chamber's light. Smaller beings like the Takari huddled in their environmental suits, while the plant-like Sylvans swayed gently in their soil beds. At the center of this grand assembly stood a single human woman. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez wore a simple black diplomatic uniform that looked primitive compared to the glowing robes and biomechanical suits around her. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat style, and her brown eyes remained calm despite the hostile atmosphere. She held a small data pad containing Earth's application for Council membership. "Members of the Galactic Council," Elena began, her voice echoing clearly through the translation systems. "I come before you today representing the human species of Earth. We seek to join this great alliance of civilized worlds." A harsh laugh came from the Vorthon section. High Chancellor Kresh stood nearly 3 meters tall, his elongated skull bearing ceremonial markings of rank. His forearms gestured dismissively as he spoke. "Civilized? Your species still uses chemical rockets to reach orbit. We mastered gravity manipulation 5,000 years ago." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Aquarian delegate's voice bubbled through his sphere's speakers. "Their military history shows constant warfare. In the past century alone, they fought 2 global conflicts that killed millions. They barely discovered faster than light travel 50 years ago," added the Takari representative, her small form nearly lost in her bulky suit. "We achieved this milestone when their planet was still forming." Elena waited for the comments to die down before responding. "You speak of our technology as if it defines our worth. Yes, we are newer to space travel than many of you, but consider what we have accomplished in such a short time. We went from first flight to lunar landing in 66 years. From nuclear fission to fusion power in 30. Our rate of advancement is unprecedented." "Advancement built on violence and destruction," interrupted the Sylvan delegate, their voice carrying the whisper of wind through leaves. "Your species cannot exist without conflict. You fight over resources, territory, ideology. Such beings have no place among peaceful civilizations." The Drakmor ambassador hissed his agreement. The reptilian being's scales shifted color as he spoke. "They consume their planet's resources without thought for future generations. They pollute their air and water. They drive other species to extinction. This is not the behavior of a species ready for galactic citizenship." Elena felt her patience being tested but maintained her composure. "Every species in this chamber faced similar challenges during their development. The difference is that we are addressing these problems. Our carbon emissions have dropped 40% in the last decade. We have established protected areas covering 30% of our landmass. We are learning from our mistakes. Learning slowly and only when forced by circumstances," Chancellor Kresh replied coldly. "Your application shows a species barely evolved beyond barbarism. You still maintain separate nations that compete instead of cooperate. You have weapons capable of destroying your entire planet. How can we trust such beings?" The Zentorian delegate spoke from his floating platform. "Their genetics show clear signs of evolutionary aggression. They evolved as persistence hunters chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. This predatory nature remains in their modern behavior. That same persistence helped us survive ice ages and natural disasters that would have destroyed weaker species," Elena countered. "It drives our exploration of space and our refusal to accept limitations. These traits could benefit the Council. Benefit us." Chancellor Kresh's voice carried clear contempt. "What could your primitive species possibly offer? Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your science is based on crude observations rather than true understanding. Your society is chaotic and unpredictable." The Aquarian delegate added his voice to the criticism. "They have not even achieved planetary unity. How can they represent Earth in galactic affairs when they cannot agree among themselves?" Elena straightened her shoulders. "Our diversity is our strength, not our weakness. Different perspectives lead to innovative solutions. While you seek uniformity, we celebrate variety. This drives creativity and adaptation." "Adaptation?" The Takari representative's laugh was translated as a series of clicks. "Your species cannot even adapt to your own planet's climate changes. You require artificial environments to survive in most regions. We achieved perfect biological adaptation millennia ago. Perfect adaptation often means perfect stagnation, Elena replied firmly. Our need to overcome challenges has made us resourceful. We thrive in environments that would kill other species. We solve problems with limited resources. We find ways to survive against impossible odds. Chancellor Kresh raised all four arms for silence. Enough of this waste of time. The human application has been reviewed by all member species. Their technology, society, and biology mark them as inferior beings. They are violent, primitive, and unstable. Granting them membership would lower the standards of this council. The chamber filled with sounds of agreement from various species. Elena watched as delegates nodded, clicked, hissed, or hummed their approval of the Chancellor's words. Furthermore, Kresh continued, their application for even observer status is rejected. Humans are not ready for contact with truly advanced civilizations. They should return to their little planet and perhaps apply again in a few thousand years, assuming they survive that long without destroying themselves. Elena felt anger rising in her chest but kept her voice steady. You make this decision based on prejudice rather than facts. You judge us by standards you yourself did not meet at our stage of development. This council claims to represent justice and fairness, yet you show neither today. Justice? Chancellor Kresh's voice turned harsh. Justice is protecting advanced civilizations from contamination by barely evolved primates. Your species swings from trees to spaceships in mere centuries and thinks this makes you special. You are children playing with dangerous toys. The formal vote began immediately. Each species representative announced their decision. The Vorthans voted to reject. The Aquarians rejected. The Takari rejected. One by one, all 12 species voted against human membership. The translation systems carried their reasons. Too primitive, too violent, too unstable, too dangerous. Elena listened to each rejection without changing expression. When the vote concluded, she gathered her datapad and prepared to leave. At the chamber's exit, she turned back to address the assembly one final time. Members of the Galactic Council, you have made your decision clear. You believe humans are inferior and unworthy of your association. History will judge whether this was wisdom or foolishness. She paused, her eyes meeting Chancellor Kresh's gaze directly. I will offer you one piece of advice from our primitive species. Underestimating others has been the downfall of many civilizations. Those who dismiss potential allies often find themselves facing threats alone. The chamber erupted in laughter at her words. Species that rarely agreed on anything found common ground in mocking the humans' warning. Chancellor Kresh's booming laugh echoed above the others. Did you hear that? He called out between laughs. The primitive human threatens us. What could their tiny ships and chemical weapons possibly do against our combined might? Elena walked away as the laughter continued behind her. She did not look back as she boarded her small diplomatic shuttle. As her ship left Nexus Prime's atmosphere, she composed her report to Earth. The Council had rejected humanity completely. What none of them knew was that 3 hostile fleets had already left their hidden bases in dark space. The enemy had been watching, waiting, learning the Council's weaknesses. Their attack would begin within days, targeting the most defended worlds first. The Council's arrogance had blinded them to the approaching storm. The laughter in the crystal chamber would soon turn to screams for help. 3 days after the humiliating rejection of humanity's application, emergency alarms screamed across Nexus Prime. The crystal spires of the capital city vibrated with urgent warning tones that had not sounded in over a century. In the Galactic Council's emergency chamber, representatives rushed to their positions as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Chancellor Kresh stood at the central command platform, his gray skin now pale with shock. The massive holographic display above him showed 3 different star systems under attack. Red warning symbols blinked rapidly as data streams updated in real time. Report, Kresh demanded, his forearms working frantically at different control panels. The Aquarian military coordinator's voice bubbled with panic from his emergency sphere. The Oceania system is under massive assault. Unknown vessels are attacking our underwater cities. They appear to be biological in nature, not mechanical. A second voice cut through the chaos. The Drakmor defense minister hissed as he spoke. Reptilia Prime is also under attack. The enemy ships readapting to our plasma weapons in real time. Our orbital defenses are failing. The third report came from a shaking Takari communications officer. Long-range sensors detect the same enemy forces approaching the Centauri colonies. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Chancellor Kresh stared at the display in disbelief. The enemy ships looked like massive insects made of living metal and organic tissue. They moved in swarm patterns, overwhelming defenders through sheer numbers and coordinated attacks. Who are they? Kresh asked. How did they get past our early warning systems? The Sylvan intelligence chief's whispered voice carried through the chamber. We have identified them as the Hive. They are an ancient enemy that appeared briefly in historical records 3,000 years ago. They were thought destroyed. Thought destroyed? The Zentorian strategic advisor floated closer to the display. You mean they have been hiding all this time? Apparently so. They have been watching us, learning our tactics and technology. These attacks are perfectly coordinated to exploit our specific weaknesses. On the main screen, footage from Oceania showed the horror unfolding. Massive bioships descended into the planet's oceans like living asteroids. They struck the Aquarian cities with devastating force, their organic hulls absorbing energy weapons that should have destroyed them. Smaller creatures poured out of the ships, adapted perfectly for underwater combat. The Aquarian coordinator's voice cracked with emotion. Atlantica City is gone. 3 million civilians lost contact. New Geneva is reporting massive breaches in their dome structures. The enemy creatures are breathing our water and using our own ocean against us. Similar reports came from Reptilia Prime. The Hive forces had somehow developed resistance to the Drakmor's advanced plasma technology. Worse, they were using captured Drakmor equipment to create hybrid weapons that turned the Reptilians' own defenses against them. How many ships do we have available for immediate response? Chancellor Kresh demanded. The Vorthan fleet commander checked his tactical displays. The 3rd Fleet is patrolling the Outer Rim sectors. The 5th Fleet is conducting training exercises near Nexus Prime. The 1st and 2nd Fleets are spread across 17 different systems on routine patrols. Recall them all immediately. Sir, even at maximum speed, it will take 48 hours to gather our scattered forces. The attacks are happening now. Kresh slammed his primary fist on the control panel. 48 hours? These systems will be destroyed by then. The chamber fell silent except for the constant stream of emergency reports. Each update brought worse news. The Hive forces were not just attacking randomly. They were systematically targeting the Council's most important worlds, using tactics that suggested detailed knowledge of each species' capabilities and weaknesses. A new voice interrupted the grim reports. The Takari representative's tone was hesitant but urgent. Chancellor, we are receiving a transmission from the Outer Rim. It appears to be from a human vessel. A human vessel? Kresh's voice carried both surprise and anger. What are they doing in our space? The message is from Captain Marcus Webb of the Earthship Determination. He says they have detected the distress signals from the attacked systems. Block the transmission. We do not need help from primitives. The Aquarian coordinator spoke up desperately. Chancellor, with respect, we need any help we can get. Our people are dying. You would trust barely evolved apes with military operations? Their primitive weapons would be useless against these hive creatures. Another update flashed on the screen. The Centauri colonies had confirmed the approaching hive fleet was even larger than the forces that attacked the other systems. The colonists were evacuating but had nowhere to go with their slow transport ships. The Drakmor defense minister's scales had turned completely black, indicating extreme stress. Chancellor, pride will not save our people. If these humans can help in any way, should we not at least listen? Never. Kresh's voice echoed through the chamber. It would be unthinkable humiliation to ask for help from a species we just rejected as inferior. What message would that send to the galaxy? That we value lives over ego? The Sylvan chief's whisper carried clearly in the shocked silence that followed. Chancellor Kresh turned on the plant being with fury. You forget your place. I am the elected leader of this council, and I will not allow our reputation to be destroyed by desperation. While the council argued, the real battle was unfolding in space near the Outer Rim. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of his patrol ship, watching the tactical display with growing concern. His small fleet of 3 human vessels had been conducting routine border patrols when they picked up the emergency transmissions. Captain, his communications officer reported, the council has blocked our transmission attempts. They are not accepting our offer of assistance. Webb was a veteran of several human conflicts, a man in his 50s with gray hair and steady hands. His ship was not the most advanced in the human fleet, but it was tough and reliable. More importantly, his crew was experienced and dedicated, Sir, his tactical officer continued, long-range sensors show the situation is getting worse. The bioships are using some kind of adaptive technology. They are learning from each encounter. Webb studied the sensor readings showing the distant battles. The Hive forces were indeed learning and adapting at an incredible rate. Each attack was more effective than the last as they incorporated new knowledge into their tactics. Captain, what are your orders? His first officer asked. Webb looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were people who had volunteered to serve in space, far from Earth and their families. They had sworn to protect not just humanity, but innocent life wherever they found it. The Council can refuse our help, Webb said quietly, but they cannot stop us from acting on our own. Plot a course for the Drakmor system, maximum speed. Sir, that will put us in violation of several treaties. We could face court-martial. Webb smiled grimly. Some things are more important than regulations. If we can save lives, the consequences are my responsibility alone. His crew exchanged glances, then nodded their agreement. Within minutes, the 3 human ships were accelerating toward the battle zone. Their primitive but determined crews preparing for a fight they were supposedly too inferior to win. Back on Nexus Prime, the reports continued to worsen. The Hive forces were overwhelming every defense the Council threw at them. Their bioships seemed to eat energy weapons and grow stronger. Their smaller creatures adapted to any environment within hours. Chancellor Kresh watched his civilization's most advanced technology fail against an enemy that defied all logical analysis. The creatures fought with organic weapons that changed and evolved during battle. They showed tactical intelligence beyond anything in the Council's databases. Sir, a technician reported quietly, we are detecting 3 small ships approaching the Drakmor system. The signatures match human vessels. Kresh's expression darkened. Those foolish primitives will be destroyed in minutes. Their chemical weapons are useless against adaptive bioarmor. But even as he spoke, Chancellor Kresh felt a small, unwelcome thought growing in his mind. What if the humans succeeded where his advanced fleets had failed? What if their primitive, unpredictable nature was exactly what was needed against an enemy that had learned to counter every advanced tactic? He pushed the thought away angrily. Humans were inferior. The vote had been unanimous. They could not possibly accomplish what the galaxy's greatest civilizations could not. The war that would change everything was about to begin. Captain Marcus. Webb's small fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Drakmor system. What they saw made even the veteran crew members gasp in shock. The once proud Reptilia Prime hung in space like a wounded animal, its orbital stations burning and debris fields spreading in all directions. My God, whispered Lieutenant Katie Morgan, the tactical officer. Look at the size of those things. The Hive bioships were massive beyond anything in human experience. Each one was roughly the size of a city, covered in what looked like living armor that shifted and changed color as they watched. Smaller creatures swarmed around them like antibodies protecting a larger organism. Captain, reported Ensign David Park from the communication station, I'm picking up emergency transmissions from the planet's surface. Thousands of Drakmor civilians are trapped in underground shelters. The Hive creatures are trying to break through. Webb studied the tactical display. 3 human ships against what appeared to be an entire invasion fleet. By any reasonable calculation, they should retreat immediately and report back to Earth. But reasonable calculations had never stopped humans before. Analysis, Lieutenant Morgan. What are we looking at? Morgan worked frantically at her console, processing sensor data. The bioships appear to be organic mechanical hybrids. They're absorbing energy from the Drakmor plasma weapons and using it to grow stronger. Each hit is making them more resistant to the next attack. What about their smaller ships? Those aren't ships, sir. They're creatures. Living beings that can survive in space and atmosphere. They're adapted for close combat, and seem to be learning from every encounter with Drakmor forces. Chief Engineer Rodriguez spoke up from his station. Captain, our missile systems use explosive warheads, not energy weapons. Maybe they can't adapt to good old-fashioned kinetic force. Webb nodded slowly. It was a slim hope, but it was something. What's our weapons status? All systems operational. We have 64 nuclear-tipped missiles across the 3 ships, plus conventional explosives and kinetic rounds. Sir, Park interrupted urgently. I'm detecting massive life signs in the shelter complexes on the planet. Millions of Drakmor are trapped down there. The Hive creatures are breaking through their defenses level by level. Webb made his decision. All ships, this is actual command. We are going in. Target the smallest bioships first. Use conventional explosives only until we see how they react. Stay mobile and watch each other's backs. The 3 human ships accelerated toward the battle zone. The Earth vessel Determination led the formation, flanked by the smaller ships Defiance and Resolution. They were tiny compared to the Hive bioships, but they moved with purpose and precision. Contact in 30 seconds, Morgan reported. The Hive forces have detected us. Several creatures are moving to intercept. Let them come, Webb replied calmly. Fire when ready. The first exchange shocked everyone. The human missiles struck the approaching Hive creatures with devastating effect. Instead of adapting to absorb the explosions, the organic armor was torn apart by the kinetic force. 3 creatures died instantly, their bodies spinning away into space. Direct hits, Morgan shouted. Sir, they're not adapting to our weapons. Why not? Webb demanded. Chief Rodriguez had the answer. They've been studying Council technology for thousands of years. Energy weapons, plasma beams, particle accelerators, but we're using primitive chemical explosives and kinetic force. They have no adaptation for weapons they've never encountered. The tide of battle began to shift immediately. The human ships moved like dancers through space, using maneuvers that defied Hive expectations. Where Council ships tried to stand and fight with superior firepower, the humans hit and ran, struck from unexpected angles, and used their environment as a weapon. Determination to all ships, Webb commanded. Pattern Delta 7. Use the debris field for cover and concentrate fire on the bioship closest to the planet. The 3 ships spread out and began a coordinated attack, unlike anything the Hive had faced. They used destroyed Drakmor stations as cover, fired missiles through asteroid fields to hide their trajectories, and even rammed smaller creatures when necessary. The largest bioship near Reptilia Prime began to show damage. Its organic armor was tough, but it could not adapt fast enough to the variety of attacks the humans were using. Nuclear warheads opened massive wounds in its hull, while conventional explosives targeted what appeared to be vital organs. Sir, Park called out excitedly, I'm receiving transmissions from the planet. The Drakmor forces are rallying. They see what we're doing and they're copying our tactics. On the planet's surface, Drakmor military commanders watched in amazement as the tiny human ships accomplished what their advanced fleets could not. Instead of relying on sophisticated energy weapons, they began using their oldest and most primitive weapons: chemical explosives, kinetic rounds, and even physical ramming attacks. The combination of human innovation and Drakmor determination proved devastating. The Hive creatures that had seemed invincible minutes before began to retreat. Their adaptive advantages meant nothing against weapons and tactics they had never encountered. Captain, Morgan reported, the main bioship is pulling back. We've actually hurt them, but the victory came at a cost. The Resolution had taken heavy damage from a Hive creature's acid attack. Her hull was compromised and her crew was working frantically to maintain life support. Resolution, this is Webb. Status report. Captain Lisa Hayes' voice came through with static interference. We're still fighting, sir. Hull breach on Deck 3, but we've sealed it. My people aren't backing down. Understood. Fall back and cover us while we extract the civilian transports. The next phase of the operation was the most dangerous. Human shuttles launched from all 3 ships, flying directly into the planet's atmosphere to reach the trapped Drakmor civilians. These were not combat vessels, just lightly armed transport craft flown by volunteers. Lieutenant Tom Wilson piloted the lead shuttle through anti-aircraft fire and atmospheric interference. His co-pilot, Sergeant Ann Foster, worked the sensors while calling out targets. There, Foster pointed through the cockpit window. Underground complex at 2 o'clock. I'm reading massive life signs. Wilson brought the shuttle down in a perfect landing despite enemy fire. The rescue teams that emerged wore standard atmospheric suits and carried basic weapons. They looked primitive compared to the advanced Drakmor technology around them, but they moved with confidence and purpose. The rescued Drakmor civilians could hardly believe what they were seeing. These supposedly inferior beings were risking their lives to save people who had just rejected them from the Galactic Council. Some of the reptilian beings wept openly as human soldiers helped them into the rescue shuttles. In orbit, the space battle continued. The humans had proven that the Hive could be beaten, but they were still outnumbered hundreds to 1. Captain Webb knew they could not win a prolonged engagement. All ships prepare for extraction. We've done what we came to do. Sir, Morgan protested, there are still civilians down there. And there are Drakmore rescue ships on the way. We've shown them how to fight these things. Now they can save their own people. As the human fleet prepared to withdraw, something unexpected happened. The remaining Hive bioships began retreating as well. The massive creatures that had seemed unstoppable were pulling back from the planet. "Sir," Park reported in amazement, "the Hive forces are withdrawing from the entire system." Chief Rodriguez had a theory. "Captain, I think we scared them. They've never faced an enemy they couldn't analyze and counter. We're unpredictable," Webb smiled grimly. "Good. Let them wonder what else we might do." The 3 human ships jumped back to faster than light speed, leaving behind a saved world and a galaxy that would never look at humanity the same way again. The rescue had been transmitted across the galactic communication networks. Every species in the Council had watched primitive humans accomplish what their advanced technology could not. On Nexus Prime, Chancellor Kresh stood in stunned silence as he watched the battle recordings. The beings he had called barely evolved primates had just saved one of the Council's most important worlds. Their crude weapons and unpredictable tactics had succeeded where sophisticated strategies had failed. But pride still burned in his chest. Admitting error was not something Chancellor Kresh did easily. Even as reports came in that human fleets were moving toward the other attacked systems, he struggled with the implications. "Sir," his aide whispered, "should we send them our thanks?" Kresh's jaw tightened. "Not yet. This could be a lucky accident. Let us see if they can repeat their success." Deep down, however, he already knew the answer. The humans had not just won a battle. They had changed the rules of war itself. And the galaxy would never be the same. Across space, Admiral Torres on Earth was mobilizing every available ship. The defense of the Council worlds was now humanity's unofficial mission. Whether the Council wanted their help or not, Admiral Sandra Torres stood in the command center on Luna Base, watching as dozens of human ships prepared for the largest military operation in Earth's history. The wall displays showed 3 different battle zones where Hive forces were attacking Council worlds. Her fleet was about to split into 3 groups and attempt something that military experts said was impossible. "Admiral," reported Captain Blake Richardson, her chief of staff, "all task forces report ready for simultaneous deployment. Task Force Alpha is prepared for the Oceania system, Task Force Beta for Centauri, and Task Force Gamma will reinforce Captain Webb at Reptilia Prime." Torres nodded. Her gray hair pulled back in a tight military style. She had spent 30 years in Earth's space forces, rising through the ranks during humanity's expansion into the solar system. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. "Execute Operation Guardian Angel. All task forces jump in 15 minutes. The plan was audacious beyond belief. While the Galactic Council struggled to organize their scattered fleets, Earth was sending every available warship to protect worlds that had just rejected human membership. 3 battles, 3 different environments, 3 chances to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. Colonel Lisa Hayes commanded the ground assault forces, heading to Oceania. Her transports were filled with soldiers equipped for underwater combat, something most spacefaring species had never needed to develop. The Aquarians were water breathers who had built their civilization in the planet's vast oceans, but they had no experience fighting amphibious enemies. "Colonel," her aide Lieutenant Kevin Walsh reported, "final equipment check complete. All units have their rebreathers and pressure suits. The experimental underwater weapons are loaded and ready." Hayes reviewed the tactical data one more time. The Hive creatures attacking Oceania had adapted perfectly to the aquatic environment. They moved through water like it was their natural habitat, using the ocean's pressure and currents as weapons against the Aquarian defenders. "They made one mistake," Hayes told her officers. "They assumed surface dwellers couldn't fight underwater. Time to show them how wrong they are." Meanwhile, Commander James Park led the space forces approaching the Centauri system. His ships were the newest in the human fleet, designed specifically for deep space combat. Unlike the energy weapons favored by Council forces, human ships carried kinetic weapons, missile systems, and experimental technologies that the Hive had never encountered. "Commander," his tactical officer reported, "long-range sensors confirm massive Hive presence at Centauri. They have completely surrounded the colony worlds. Estimated enemy strength is 3 times larger than the forces that attacked Oceania." Park studied the sensor displays with calm concentration. He was young for a fleet commander, only 35, but he had shown remarkable tactical ability during the recent border conflicts with pirates and raiders. "They're using their numbers to overwhelm the defenders," Park observed. "Standard swarm tactics, but swarms have weaknesses too." The three human task forces jumped to faster-than-light speed simultaneously, beginning the most dangerous rescue mission in galactic history. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council watched with a mixture of hope and disbelief as the primitive humans rushed toward battles that their own advanced forces had abandoned. Task Force Alpha dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Oceania system. What they found was a world under siege. The planet's beautiful blue oceans were stained with the wreckage of Aquarian cities and the dark forms of hive bioships. Thousands of organic creatures moved through the water like living torpedoes. "All units, this is Hayes," the colonel announced over the fleet communication system. "Begin Operation Deep Strike. Landing craft proceed to coordinates as planned. Fleet units provide close support and be ready for extraction." The human landing craft were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of trying to fight the ocean, they were designed to use it. Streamlined hulls allowed them to move underwater at high speed, while specialized weapons turned water pressure into a weapon. Colonel Hayes led the first wave personally, riding in an assault craft that dove straight toward the largest underwater city. Through the transparent hull, she could see hive creatures swarming around the Aquarian structures like antibodies attacking an infection. "Contact in 30 seconds, her pilot announced. "Enemy creatures are moving to intercept." "Let them come," Hayes replied calmly. "All units fire when ready." The underwater battle that followed defied all previous military experience. Human soldiers fought in 3 dimensions, using specialized equipment to move through water like it was air. Their weapons fired explosive harpoons that created massive pressure waves, stunning or killing hive creatures that had seemed invulnerable to energy weapons. The key to their success was adaptation. Where the Aquarians had tried to fight the same way they always did, humans changed their tactics to fit the environment. They used the ocean currents to move faster than the enemy expected, employed sound as a weapon to confuse hive biosensors, and even used marine life as allies. "Hayes to all units," the colonel reported as her forces stormed into the first captured city. "Aquarian civilians confirmed alive in the lower levels. Continue rescue operations. These creatures can be beaten." At the same time, Commander Park's fleet was engaging the massive hive swarm at Centauri. The enemy had surrounded the 3 colony worlds with thousands of bioships, creating what appeared to be an impenetrable wall of living vessels. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "enemy forces are moving to surround us." Standard council tactics would be to retreat and call for reinforcements. Park smiled grimly. "Good thing we're not the council. All ships execute maneuver pattern chaos. Show them what unpredictable really means." What followed was a space battle unlike anything in recorded history. Instead of fighting in formation like civilized fleets, the human ships scattered and attacked from every possible angle. They used asteroids as cover, created artificial debris fields with their missile explosions, and even used the gravity of the planets themselves as weapons. The hive creatures, so perfectly adapted to counter-council technology, found themselves facing opponents who seemed to break every rule of space combat. Human ships would ram enemy vessels when their weapons ran out, use their own explosions as cover for other attacks, and coordinate strikes in ways that defied logical analysis. Direct hit on the command bioship. Park's tactical officer shouted, "Sir, their formation is breaking apart." The turning point came when Commander Park ordered his ships to do something no council force had ever attempted. Instead of trying to destroy the hive vessels, they began capturing them. Human boarding parties equipped with primitive but effective weapons fought their way into the bioships and began shutting down their organic systems from within. "Park to all ships," the commander announced. "They can adapt to our weapons, but they can't adapt to us pulling their wires out by hand." Back at Oceania, Colonel Hayes was leading her soldiers through the flooded corridors of New Atlantica, the Aquarians' capital city. The hive creatures had been systematically hunting down civilians, but they had not expected armed resistance from air-breathing invaders. "Room by room, people," Hayes commanded over her suit radio. "Check every chamber. If it's blue and friendly, help it. If it's ugly and hostile, kill it." Her soldiers moved with practiced efficiency through the alien architecture. Many of them were veterans of Earth's underwater mining operations and submarine services. They had trained their entire careers for environments that most space soldiers never experienced. Sergeant Maria Santos was the first to reach a group of trapped Aquarian civilians. The water-breathing beings were huddled in a sealed chamber, their biosuits flickering with failing power. They looked up in amazement as the human soldier appeared in their flooded corridor. "Don't worry," Santos said, her suit translator converting her words into the Aquarian language. "We're here to help. Can you move?" The young Aquarian, who seemed to be their leader, bubbled a response. You are the humans? The ones the council rejected?" "That's right," Santos replied, helping them toward the exit. "Turns out rejection doesn't stop us from doing what's right." Throughout all 3 battle zones, the same pattern repeated. Human forces used tactics that the Hive had never encountered. Weapons that bypassed their adaptive defenses, and strategies that turned their greatest strengths into weaknesses. Most importantly, they fought not just for victory, but for the protection of innocent life. Where Council forces had focused on preserving their advanced technology and maintaining their tactical formations, humans threw themselves into desperate situations to save civilians. Of species that had called them inferior, the galaxy watched in stunned amazement as primitive human ships accomplished what the Council's most advanced fleets could not. Battle footage was transmitted across every communication network, showing humans risking their lives for beings who had just rejected them. On Nexus Prime, Chancellor Kresh stood before the main tactical display, watching 3 simultaneous victories unfold. His earlier confidence was completely shattered. The humans were not just winning, they were revolutionizing warfare itself. "Sir," his aide whispered, "the other council members are asking for your statement. How do we respond to this?" Kresh remained silent for a long moment. His entire worldview was crumbling. Everything he had believed about technological superiority, advanced evolution, and civilized warfare was being proven wrong by a species he had dismissed as barely evolved primates. "Chancellor?" the aide pressed. "Cancel all standing orders regarding human contact," Kresh said finally, his voice barely audible. "Open communication channels to their fleet commanders. It appears we have been—" He paused, struggling with the words. "Profoundly mistaken." The tide of war had turned completely. The Hive forces, so confident in their adapted perfection, found themselves facing an enemy that could not be analyzed, predicted, or countered. Humanity had not just joined the galactic community, they had saved it. But the greatest test was yet to come. 7 days after the last Hive bioship fled into deep space, the galaxy was fundamentally changed. The 3 rescued worlds buzzed with activity as survivors were counted, cities rebuilt, and stories shared of the impossible rescue that had saved millions of lives. But the most dramatic changes were happening in the crystal chambers of Nexus Prime. Chancellor Kresh stood before the Galactic Council's emergency assembly, his forearms hanging at his sides in a gesture of defeat. Around him, representatives from all 12 member species sat in stunned silence. The holographic displays showed the aftermath of the Hive attacks and the decisive human interventions that had ended them. "Members of the Council," Kresh began, his voice carrying none of its former arrogance, "we are gathered to address our grave error in judgment. 3 days ago, ships from a species we rejected as inferior saved our most important worlds. They accomplished what our combined fleets could not. They rescued millions of our citizens while asking for nothing in return." The Aquarian representative floated in his transparent sphere, his biosuit dim with emotion. "Chancellor, the humans who saved New Atlantica could have retreated when the situation became dangerous. Instead, they fought room by room through our flooded cities. They breathed water like we do, moved through our environment like they were Bohr. And died protecting people they had never met." A hologram appeared above the central platform, showing Colonel Lisa Hayes leading her soldiers through the underwater corridors of the Aquarian capital. The image captured the moment when she carried an injured Aquarian child to safety, her own suit damaged and leaking. The Drakmor representative's scales had shifted to deep blue, indicating profound respect. On Reptilia Prime, Captain Webb's forces did not just drive off the Hive attackers. They stayed to help with rescue operations until our own ships arrived. Their medics worked alongside our doctors to save the wounded, even though our physiologies are completely different. More images flashed on the display, human soldiers sharing their emergency supplies with Drakmor civilians, Earth ships using their own hulls to shield damaged Drakmor vessels during evacuation. Medical teams working around the clock to treat injuries with improvised techniques. The Zentaurian delegate spoke from his floating platform. At Centauri, Commander Park could have retreated when his ships were outnumbered 50-1. Instead, he developed new tactics that turned the Hive's greatest strength into their weakness. His innovations saved our colonies and changed warfare forever. Chancellor Kresh nodded slowly. The evidence is overwhelming. We judged humanity based on our prejudices rather than their character. We called them primitive because their technology was different from ours. We called them violent because they solved problems through action rather than endless debate. We were wrong. The Sylvan representative's whispered voice carried clearly through the chamber. More than wrong. We were blind. The humans demonstrated virtues we claim to value but rarely practice. Courage, sacrifice, innovation, and compassion for strangers. They risked everything to help beings who had just insulted and rejected them. A new voice interrupted the proceedings. Incoming transmission from Earth Vessel Determination, announced the Chamber's communication system. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez requests permission to address the Council. All eyes turned to Chancellor Kresh. The last time Elena had stood in this chamber, she had been dismissed and mocked. Now she was returning as the representative of the species that had saved the galaxy. Grant her access immediately, Kresh commanded. The great doors of the Council chamber opened, and Elena Rodriguez entered once again. But this time she was not alone. Behind her walked Captain Marcus Webb, still wearing his battle-damaged uniform. Colonel Lisa Hayes accompanied them, her military bearing evident despite her diplomatic dress. Commander James Park completed the human delegation, his young face serious but determined. As they approached the central platform, something unprecedented happened. Every member of the Galactic Council stood in respect. The Aquarians rose in their spheres, the Vorthons straightened to their full height. Even the plant-like Sylvans swayed in formal acknowledgement. Elena looked around the chamber with calm dignity. Members of the Galactic Council, I return not seeking admission, but to ensure that the bonds forged in battle are properly honored. Chancellor Kresh stepped forward, his massive frame somehow seeming smaller than before. Ambassador Rodriguez, I stand before you to make a formal apology. 7 days ago, this council committed a grave injustice. We rejected humanity based on ignorance and prejudice. We called you inferior when we were the ones lacking in wisdom. He paused, struggling with words that did not come easily to someone accustomed to commanding respect, rather than seeking forgiveness. Your people saved our worlds when they had no obligation to do so. They risked their lives for strangers who had insulted them. They showed us what true civilization looks like. Elena listened without interruption, her expression neutral. When Kresh finished, she looked around the chamber before responding. Chancellor, humanity does not seek apologies. We seek understanding. You judged us by our technology rather than our character. You saw our differences as weaknesses rather than strengths. But most importantly, you assumed that advancement meant perfection. Captain Webb stepped forward slightly. Every species in this chamber has made mistakes during their development. The difference is not whether you fall, but whether you get back up and learn from the experience, Colonel Hayes added her voice. We did not save your worlds to prove our worth. We did it because it was right. The measure of a civilization is not its weapons or technology, but how it treats others in their darkest hour. Commander Park spoke last. The Hive forces were defeated not by superior firepower, but by different thinking. Your species had become predictable because you had forgotten how to innovate. Sometimes the newest perspective sees solutions that experience has overlooked. Chancellor Kresh nodded slowly. You speak wisdom that we had lost in our pursuit of technological perfection. But how can this council earn forgiveness for such a grave error? Elena's expression softened slightly. Forgiveness is not earned, Chancellor. It is freely given. Humanity forgives the council's judgment because we understand that fear often masquerades as wisdom. You were trying to protect your member species from what you saw as a threat. She paused, looking directly at each representative in turn. But if you truly wish to honor the sacrifice of those who fought to save your worlds, then change how this council evaluates worthiness. Judge species by their actions, not their technology. Value diversity of thought over uniformity of approach. Remember that strength comes in many forms. The Takari representative spoke up, her small form visible in her environmental suit. Ambassador, would humanity consider joining the council now? Not as supplicants seeking membership, but as equals who have proven their worth? That depends, Elena replied, on whether this council is prepared to change its fundamental assumptions about what makes a species worthy of membership. Chancellor Kresh took a deep breath. Ambassador Rodriguez, I propose that we vote not just on human membership, but on a new charter for this council. One that values character over technology, diversity over conformity, and action over rhetoric. The debate that followed was unlike any in the council's history. Instead of focusing on technological achievements or military strength, the discussion centered on values, ethics, and the qualities that truly defined civilization. The Aquarian representative spoke of humanity's willingness to adapt to any environment to help others. The Drakmor praised their tactical innovation and refusal to abandon the innocent. The Zentorians marveled at their ability to find solutions that more advanced minds had missed. When the vote was called, it was unanimous. Not just for human membership, but for the new charter that would guide the council into a different future. As Elena took humanity's seat for the first time, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. They had been rejected as inferior, yet had proven themselves through action rather than words. They had been called primitive, yet had saved the galaxy with innovation and courage. Chancellor Kresh approached her after the ceremony. Ambassador, I must ask, how can your species forgive us so easily? We insulted you, rejected you, and questioned your worth. Elena smiled. Chancellor, humanity learned long ago that holding grudges is a luxury we cannot afford. We face the universe as it is, not as we wish it were. Yesterday's enemies can become tomorrow's allies if they are willing to change. She looked around the chamber, now filled with representatives working together on the new charter. Besides, you did learn from your mistake. That takes courage too. As the council session continued late into the Nexus Prime Night cycle, ships from all member species worked together to hunt down the remaining Hive forces. Human tactical innovations were being integrated with council technology. Joint training programs were being established. New exploration missions were being planned with mixed crews. The galaxy had not just gained a new member species. It had rediscovered the values that had originally brought the council together. The protection of innocent life, the pursuit of knowledge, and the belief that different species working together could accomplish more than any could alone. Elena Rodriguez sat in humanity's chair and smiled. They had not just earned membership in the Galactic Council. They had helped transform it into something better than it was before. In the end, that was perhaps the most human achievement of all, taking something broken and making it work again, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the simple belief that everyone deserved a chance to prove their worth. The stars belonged to all of them now.